Hello everyone, welcome to a new video. This time I bring you the story of one of the most fascinating and terrifying parasites in the Resident Evil universe, Las Plagas. These creatures, originally introduced in Resident Evil 4 and later expanded upon in subsequent titles, represent one of the most memorable biological threats in the entire franchise, mainly because they are parasites capable of retaining the intelligence of their hosts, something very different from what happened with the traditional zombies infected by the T-virus, and even more so compared to what we saw with Nemesis. In this video, I'll explain in detail the history, variants, biological capabilities, and specific characteristics of each type of plaga, including the subspecies that appeared in later iterations. I'll also review the various bioorganic weapons created based on Las Plagas, such as the fearsome Regenerators, the Giants, the Type 2 and Type 3 variants, and even Type 4, developed in the Eastern Slav Republic. Of course, I'll also cover their origins, their connection to the cult of Los Iluminados, and how these parasites came to represent such an overwhelming force of destruction and infection. At the end, we'll also discuss whether Las Plagas could be even more dangerous than other pathogens like the T-virus or the progenitor virus, or whether they have limitations that prevent them from becoming the ultimate global weapon. So without further ado, let's begin. Las Plagas are a type of parasite with insectoid and pseudo-arachnid characteristics. They often resemble small creatures with legs and a central body surrounded by tentacles. In fact, their resemblance to the iconic facehuggers from the Alien franchise is no coincidence. Las Plagas operate in a similar manner, attaching internally to the host's spinal cord and controlling their behavior through the nervous system. These creatures can reproduce via eggs that are injected into a host's body. Additionally, in certain cases, it is suggested that spores, when inhaled, can develop into adult plagas inside the respiratory system of the victim. Thanks to these multiple methods of infection, Las Plagas are highly versatile. Once they reach maturity, the adult form of the plaga tends to take on a spider-like appearance, with 4 or 8 limbs, depending on the subspecies, and has the ability to briefly survive outside the host. However, it quickly weakens if it fails to find a new organism to parasitize. Notably, some of these adult forms can spit acid or venom, and even decapitate humans with their powerful mandibles. Nevertheless, there's a crucial weakness that works against these creatures. The biological tissue of Las Plagas is extremely vulnerable to ultraviolet radiation. This makes them especially susceptible to intense sunlight or the detonation of a flash grenade. This fragility is most evident in the parasites that emerge from Ganados' bodies during nighttime. Once exposed to a strong light source and stripped of the darkness's protection, they die within seconds. This vulnerability becomes a key strategic resource for fighting them. Despite this flaw, Las Plagas are extremely adaptable and capable of infecting a wide variety of species: humans, dogs, bats, reptiles, and even fusing with insects to form hybrids like the Novistadores or Verdugos. This adaptability makes them an incredibly dangerous biological threat, and one that is extremely difficult to eradicate. The story of Las Plagas dates back to ancient times, when a cult known as Los Iluminados discovered the parasite in Spain. At the time, the ruling Salazar family, alarmed by the power these creatures possessed, chose to seal them beneath their castle. Over the centuries, the plagas remained buried, seemingly fossilized or locked in a state of hibernation. However, their true nature is far older and more complex. In fact, evidence presented in Resident Evil 5 suggests that Las Plagas may have originated, or at least also existed, in Africa. There, they are linked to the mysterious progenitor flower in the ancient Ndapaya kingdom, hinting at a deeper and more global history for the parasite. In the modern era, Osman Sadler, the leader of the newly revived Los Iluminados, convinced Ramón Salazar, the last living heir of the Salazar bloodline, to reopen the mines, awakening the fossilized plagas. This led to the infection of the nearby villagers, eventually resulting in the creation of the infamous Ganados. Sadler's ultimate plan was to use these infected as soldiers under his command, kidnap the U.S. President's daughter, Ashley Graham. and unleash a global-scale outbreak to bring powerful world governments to their knees. However, his scheme was foiled by Special Agent Leon S. Kennedy, who defeated Sadler and dismantled much of his cult's forces. Even so, the story didn't end there. Samples of the dominant Plaga strain were recovered by Albert Wesker through operatives Jack Krauser and Ada Wong. Wesker then sold and negotiated these samples with the TRICELL Corporation, which later developed the more advanced Type 2 and Type 3 variants, intended for both terrorist applications and black market trafficking. Eventually, the reach of Las Plagas extended even further, to the Eastern Slav Republic. There, President Svetlana Belikova oversaw the development of a new version of the parasite, unofficially dubbed Type 4. Thus, what began as an ancient, localized threat evolved into a global biohazard, with Las Plagas becoming one of the deadliest biological weapons in the Resident Evil universe. With this historical backdrop in place, it's time to delve deeper into the various strains of Las Plagas, starting with the original version known as Type 1. Type 1, also referred to as the original strain or the subordinate species, was the first version of the parasite reactivated by Los Iluminados. Unlike its more advanced successors, this early variant required the parasite to reach full maturity inside the host before gaining complete control. Once fully developed, the plaga would fuse with the host's nervous system, allowing the individual to retain a degree of cognitive function and awareness, though now entirely obedient to Sadler or any other bearer of the mother plaga. Because of this, not all infected became instantly aggressive or mindless. Interestingly, this version of the plaga could communicate with others through a rudimentary psychic network. This allowed infected individuals to operate in groups, coordinate attacks, and even execute complex strategies. Thanks to this hive mind behavior, Ganados could lay ambushes, use tools and weapons, and function tactically, setting them apart significantly from the mindless zombies spawned by the T-virus. On the other hand, Type 1 plaga had a notable weakness in its early stages. It could be surgically removed from the host before reaching full maturity. However, once the parasite developed into its adult form, extraction became nearly impossible without killing the host. Structurally, the parasite resembled a larval insect, equipped with appendages and remarkable adaptability. In extreme cases, the plaga could even emerge from the host's body, typically through the head or neck, revealing grotesque, monstrous forms that varied depending on the individual it had infected. Beyond the parasite itself, its most recognizable manifestation is undoubtedly the Ganados, the most common and organized group of infected individuals under its control. To begin with, Ganados retain a surprising degree of coordination and basic cognitive function. They're capable of using simple weapons, communicating, and even speaking. However, they've lost much of their empathy and humanity. Often they can be seen engaging in rural tasks, praying in churches, or performing mundane routines in an attempt to appear normal. The infection process itself follows a distinct pattern. Once the plaga egg hatches and attaches to the host's spinal cord, early symptoms such as coughing up blood, fainting, and brief blackouts begin to appear. As the parasite matures, the host becomes a full-fledged ganado, acting in unison with others under the plaga's collective influence. In terms of combat, Ganados are physically enhanced. They can withstand significant damage and operate in highly coordinated groups. Some individuals exhibit preferred mutations, such as the infamous Dr. Salvador or the Bella sisters, who are even more durable and aggressive than their counterparts. Eventually, when a Ganado suffers critical damage, the parasite may forcibly exit the host's neck, exposing its adult form. These advanced plaga are extremely lethal, though still vulnerable under certain conditions. But the Ganados aren't the only subordinate creatures created through this infection. Las Plagas have proven capable of adapting to other species as well. Take colmillos, for example, dogs infected by the parasite named for their oversized fangs. These creatures attack in packs and often display tentacle-like growths or partial mutations sprouting from their backs, making them fast, deadly threats. Then there are the terrifying armors, medieval suits animated by plagas nestled inside them. When they detect a target, the parasite manipulates the armor with its tendrils, attempting to stab or decapitate its victim. These hollow warriors are a chilling example of how the plaga can reanimate even empty shells to continue fighting. Now, moving beyond the subordinate variants, we encounter a far more dangerous and tactically advanced form of the parasite, known as the dominant plaga. This particular strain was developed in the laboratories located on the island controlled by Sadler. Its main purpose was to allow the host to retain their intelligence, free will, and even gain the ability to command other Type 1 plagas. In essence, a single individual infected with the dominant plaga could lead an entire army of Ganados while maintaining full autonomy. In terms of how it works, control is achieved through the emission of high-frequency sounds, similar to a dog whistle, which function as direct commands to subordinate parasites. Moreover, hosts infected with this strain are capable of triggering advanced mutations at will, permanently merging with the parasite in the process. Some of the most notable examples of such transformations include Bitores Méndez, Ramón Salazar, Jack Krauser, and Sadler himself. Bitores Méndez, also known as the priest or the chief, was a towering man who, upon initiating his mutation, extended his spine and took on an insect-like appearance. His superhuman strength and ability to swing across beams, using parasite-borne limbs, made him a formidable foe. Ramón Salazar, on the other hand, was of frail build. His infection led to a grotesque fusion with the Plaga Queen and one of his Verdugos. The final result was a monstrous creature covered in tentacles, with Salazar's body encased in a cocoon-like structure that functioned as its weak point. Jack Krauser, the former soldier responsible for Ashley's abduction, could mutate his arms into massive, blade-like organic weapons, tough as a shield and lethal in combat. His strength and speed surpassed most enemies, and even after sustaining fatal injuries, he managed to remain alive for a time. Finally, there was Osman Sadler, the supreme leader of Los Iluminados. Even before undergoing his final transformation, he displayed inhuman abilities such as rapid movement and the extension of long tentacles. In his ultimate form, Sadler became a towering creature, with multiple legs and eyes embedded in its joints. His human body dangled beneath the monstrous parasite, suggesting that the plaga had become the dominant entity, while Sadler served merely as a host shell. When Sadler is finally defeated by Leon S. Kennedy, the consequences go far beyond the loss of a single enemy. With the primary emitter of the parasite's high-frequency control signals destroyed, the entire network collapses. Ganados and other subordinate creatures lose cohesion, fall into disarray, and begin convulsing helplessly. This chain reaction effectively ends the threat on the island, allowing Leon and Ashley to escape before the facility self-destructs. Sadler's death marks the ultimate failure of Los Iluminados' plan for global domination. However, the fall of Sadler didn't mean the end of Las Plagas. In fact, their legacy continued to evolve thanks to the involvement of another powerful organization. When Albert Wesker handed over Plaga samples to the TRICELL Corporation, their research focused on refining the original strain by eliminating its weaknesses. The result was the Type 2 Plaga, introduced in Resident Evil 5. One of the most significant improvements was the speed of infection. Unlike the original strain, which required an egg to be implanted, Type 2 could directly invade a host through the mouth in a semi-developed form. Within seconds, the victim would convulse and transform into a Majini. Additionally, this new strain displayed remarkable resistance to sunlight, overcoming one of the core vulnerabilities of earlier versions. However, flash grenades remained an effective countermeasure. Upon maturing and leaving the host, the Type 2 Plaga could take on a variety of terrifying forms. First is the B.O.W.s, a spider-like creature with sharp claws that burrows underground and strikes from below. Secondly, we can find the Kipepeo, a flying creature with butterfly-like wings that swoops down from the sky to grab its prey using a tail-like appendage. Humans infected by the Type 2 Plaga are known as Majini, a Swahili word meaning demon or evil spirit. Unlike Ganados, the Majini can spread the Plaga orally. The parasite can emerge from their mouth and be forced down the throat of another victim, accelerating the rate of infection. Among the Majini, several elite variants stand out, including the Big Man Majini, the Chainsaw Majini, and the Towering Executioner Majini, each one more powerful and resilient than the average infected. Finally, when a Majini is killed, the parasite within may emerge in different forms. It might appear as a cephalo, a creature similar to the Type A and B parasites seen in Resident Evil 4. Or, if the Plaga had fully matured, as a developed version of either B.O.W.s or Kipepeo. Following the success of the Type 2 Plaga, TRICELL decided to push the limits even further. This led to the creation of the Type 3 Plaga, a hybrid strain that fused the genetic traits of the original Plaga with those of the dominant species. The goal was to engineer a biological weapon that not only obeyed commands, but also drastically enhanced the host's physical capabilities. To test this new strain, black market dealer Ricardo Irving deceived the Ndapaya tribe in Africa, administering the Plaga under the pretense that it was a vaccine. The outcome was catastrophic. Most of the infected experienced horrific deformities, tissue necrosis, and violent episodes of madness. These unfortunate victims would later be identified as the wetland Majini. However, the strain wasn't without serious flaws. While it did boost the host's strength and agility, it came at the cost of mental function, leaving the infected as savage, uncontrollable beasts. Despite these setbacks, TRICELL continued the experiment. Eventually, they refined the strain and successfully applied it to more disciplined subjects. Base Majini, trained combatants who retained higher aggression and exhibited superior combat skills compared to any prior Plaga hosts. Several distinctive mutations arose within the Type 3 strain, further demonstrating its destructive potential. One such mutation is known as Duvalia. When a host suffers extreme trauma, the Plaga inside can undergo a rapid and violent growth spurt, rupturing the upper torso. In its place, a massive flower-shaped mouth emerges, protected by a durable exoskeleton that makes it incredibly hard to kill. In even more extreme cases, the parasite's hyperexpansion can trigger a violent internal explosion. This reaction obliterates the host body entirely and causes collateral damage to anything nearby, proving that even in death, the Type 3 Plaga is a serious threat. Finally, we arrive at a lesser-known but equally dangerous strain, the Type 4 Plaga. This variant was introduced in the animated film Resident Evil Damnation, where it was developed within the Eastern Slav Republic under the strict supervision of its president, Svetlana Belikova. One of its most unique features was its ability to control bioorganic weapons, specifically liquor beta units. The Type 4 Plaga could emit ultrasonic signals that acted like commands, allowing hosts to manipulate these creatures and use them as living weapons against rebel forces. However, this control came with a time limit. In what was referred to as the limited dominant phase, the host initially retained command over the parasite and its subordinates. But once the Plaga matured into its adult form, it seized total control of the host body. Unsurprisingly, this led to disastrous results. Ada Wong, who had infiltrated the conflict zone, labeled this variant as a deceptive strain, stating that rather than providing long-term power or control, it inevitably consumed and destroyed its host from within. When it comes to standard infected individuals, Type 4 Ganados display a visual blend between the classic Ganados and the Majini. Their most striking traits include extremely pale skin, prominent dark veins, erratic behavior, and clumsy movements. Unlike earlier versions, these Ganados can transmit the parasite orally, much like those infected with Type 2. However, their awkward physicality more closely resembles that of traditional zombies, hinting at the possible presence of viral components or unique mutations that further alter the base pattern of infection. In another branch of bioweapon experimentation, Las Plagas proved highly effective in creating colossal bioorganic weapons. Thanks to their ability to manipulate the host bodily growth, either through bioengineering or spontaneous mutations triggered by infection with the dominant strain, researchers were able to develop massive creatures of immense strength and destructive potential. These beings were extremely hard to control and devastating on the battlefield. Some of the most iconic examples of these towering monstrosities are El Gigante and the Ndesu, seen in Resident Evil 4 and Resident Evil 5. While El Gigante was the first of its kind, later developments led to the creation of a more advanced variant, the Ndesu. Developed by TRICELL, this experimental bow was essentially a modified version of El Gigante, enhanced through the implantation of multiple Type 2 Plagas into a single host. These enhancements made the Ndesu far more formidable, nearly indestructible, and resistant to conventional weapons, with only sustained fire from high-powered weaponry posing any real threat. In a slightly different category, but no less dangerous, we find the Ganados, a Plaga-mutated humanoid built for close-quarters combat. While not as large as the giants, the Ganados possesses a grotesquely overdeveloped physique, stitched shut eyes, and a visible parasite on its back. Its weapon of choice, massive metal claws, capable of tearing through anything in its path. One of the most disturbing abilities of Las Plagas is their capacity to merge genetic material from different species, giving rise to hybrid monstrosities, or chimeras, that still operate under the Plagas' influence to some degree. Take, for example, the Novistador, a horrifying result of combining human DNA with insect traits and plague infection. Developed within Salazar's castle, these creatures can turn invisible, spit corrosive acid, and have toughened exoskeletons. Some variants are ground-based, while others possess wings for aerial attacks. Even more dangerous are the Verdugos, considered the pinnacle of hybrid Plaga experimentation. These humanoid entities possess impenetrable exoskeletons, razor-sharp reflexes, and a deadly tail-like appendage. 2 Verdugos served as personal bodyguards to Ramón Salazar. Taking hybridization even further, TRICELL initiated a line of highly classified experiments under the U designation. One such creation is the U3, also known as Pizanta. This abomination is a fusion of human, reptile, and insect DNA, with a giant plaga grafted onto its spine. Its grotesque body includes a segmented jaw and a lower half resembling an oversized insect. Meanwhile, the UH stands as TRICELL's most extreme attempt at hybrid engineering. This colossal crab-like monster fuses DNA from at least 8 different species, featuring spider-like legs and the ability to release swarms of insect drones from its abdomen. It is, in essence, a walking nightmare. We now arrive at what are arguably the most terrifying creations in the Resident Evil universe, the Regeneradores. Developed in Salazar's laboratories, Regeneradores are humanoid B.O.W.s that contain multiple small plagas inside a single human body. These parasites form an intricate network of internal tentacles, granting the host an unparalleled regenerative ability. Severed limbs and damaged tissues can be repaired within seconds, making them nearly impossible to kill through conventional means. The only viable method to neutralize them is by using a rifle with an infrared scope, allowing the operator to target and destroy the internal plagas directly. Physically, Regeneradores are unsettling. Elongated torsos, ashen-gray skin, and a lack of facial features like noses or ears, coupled with a distinctive wheezing sound that makes them instantly recognizable and deeply disturbing. Even worse is the Iron Maiden variant, a regenerator enhanced with retractable spikes protruding from its body. These spikes can impale victims from a distance, making this variant far more lethal. Iron Maidens are also blind, relying instead on heightened non-visual senses to locate their prey. Some theorists suggest that the Regenerator's human body is effectively dead, with the Plaga network taking full control of all bodily functions. In this sense, the Regeneradores are parasitic puppets, grotesque, cannibalistic husks, animated solely by the will of the Plaga within. Now then, if we compare Las Plagas to other pathogens found throughout the Resident Evil series, the differences are quite striking. From the mindless zombies created by the T-virus, to the grotesque abominations born from the G-virus, and the experimental horrors of Veronica, each biological agent brings its own flavor of terror. However, Las Plagas stand out for several key reasons. First, their ability to maintain mental control. Unlike traditional viruses that often destroy the brain or reduce the host to a mindless husk, Las Plagas allow infected individuals to retain motor skills, memory, and even strategic thinking. Second, they operate through a hive mind system. Using high-frequency signals, all infected subjects can be commanded by a single dominant host, removing the need for complex chains of command. Third, their cross-species compatibility is deeply alarming. We've seen Plagas infect not just humans, but also dogs, reptiles, insects, and even bats, resulting in highly dangerous hybrids. Of course, they're not without flaws. Their most notable weakness is intense light, particularly UV radiation. Still, the newer strains, such as Type 2 and Type 3, have significantly reduced this vulnerability. So as a bioweapon, Las Plagas offer a level of control and battlefield utility that the T-virus never achieved. While their initial rate of infection isn't as rapid as that of a virus, later versions have improved this dramatically, especially with instant oral transmission methods. It's no wonder, then, that many bioterrorist organizations have tried to acquire and refine the Plagas. But it's important to note, their development demands high-level genetic engineering, laboratory infrastructure, and constant oversight to fully harness their destructive potential. With all of this in mind, which mutation of Las Plagas do you find the most terrifying? Is it the Regeneradores, with their horrifying ability to heal any wound almost instantly? Or the giant monstrosities like El Gigante or the Ndesu that crush everything in their path? Do you believe Las Plagas could surpass the T-virus as the greatest biological threat if their methods of transmission were perfected? And finally, in your opinion, which of the variants, Type 2, Type 3, or Type 4, prove the most effective as a weapon, and why? Let me know your answers in the comments below. I'd love to hear your thoughts, theories, and perspectives on this terrifying topic. And with that, we've reached the end of our deep dive into Las Plagas. Their history, evolution, various strains, and the chilling impact they've had on the Resident Evil universe since their debut in the 4th installment. Personally, I've always found them to be one of the most fascinating and unsettling concepts in the entire franchise, especially because the infected can still think, strategize, and fight in unison, unlike the classic zombies we saw in Raccoon City. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like, share it with other RE fans, and of course subscribe so you don't miss any future videos on lore, monsters, and survival horror. Thank you so much for watching all the way through. I truly appreciate it. See you in the next video. Hey, don't go just yet. If you enjoyed my video, I'd love to recommend another one for you to watch.